he didn't talk a lot, but what he said was so powerful all the time. He was very intentional with his words. And I
Mm.
can remember, wow, he's going to support me through this, that I just going to go all out and really study my butt off. And so the time I entered Cal Poly, I had finished playing around and surfing. Like I had figured, what I was doing in city college. I put all my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I started around 9 a.m. and finished sometimes at, 5, 6, 7 at night. And then I surf Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays in the morning, from 5 a.m. to 11. And then I started doing the homework after that. So I created this whole structure. So I played a lot when I was at City College to get all that out
of me. Welcome to the Founder's Journey podcast, where we unravel the life stories of unique and successful entrepreneurs. We will take a deep dive into their highs and lows and over-the-top accomplishments. So get ready for the Founder's Journey podcast with your host, Jimmy Dulanbakis. Today we have Howard Lim. How are you doing, Howard? Thank you for being on the Founder's Journey podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Super excited to hear about your life story and all the journeys that you've been on. So, Howard, tell us about yourself. Well, where did you grow up? Where were you born, or where did you grow up?
I grew up in Santa Barbara, in California, and that's where I grew up with 8 siblings.
Wow, 8 siblings. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So it was a journey in itself, being around 8 siblings and the second of the youngest.
Awesome. And you were born. You were born in the U.S. or?
Oh, I was born in Canada.
Canada. And what part of Canada was that?
In Manitoba.
And your parents, came down to California probably for better life or better opportunities.
Yeah, the weather. They didn't care for the weather in Canada after a while.
Oof, that Canadian weather can be cold. Yeah, it's cold up there, Yeah, I remember going up to Canada during the January, February months. It's cold, but for them, it's normal, right?
Right. Yeah.
All right. So 8 siblings. What was life like growing up? Like, did you grow up in like a neighborhood? You had 8 siblings. Like, how was your, was it chaotic? Like, what, I could only imagine 8 kids in one house,
Yeah, it was a bit chaotic. It was interesting dynamics, you could say. There's brother and sisters that did not get along. So there was always like little fights that were breaking out. And then some partnerships, you could say, as well. So it was a lot of fun, though. It was a lot of fun growing up with that many siblings. It made it very interesting. There's never a dull moment.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I feel like, back years, decades ago, people used to have more kids. They have 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, and now I feel like everyone's kind of like, oh, we'll just have 2 kids, 1, 2, 3 max. 3 is even like, some of my neighbors have 3, and everyone's like, woof, oh, yeah, 3 kids. How'd you guys get around? Like, did you have to have like a minivan? Like, how'd you pack in 8 kids plus adults? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So back then, vans weren't really around. I don't recall, other than the Volkswagen van. So station wagon was very popular back then.
Yeah, that's right. Station wagons is a big thing with the wood paneling sides,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
The wood paneling. Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
With the big window in the back, you had a kid sticking, kind of on there. All right. So what was going on, like, I guess, as a child, like in school? Like, were you, what kind of student were you?
Well, it's kind of funny because when I was a kid, I found school boring, so I was in trouble a lot.
Mhm.
But there's one thing that actually kept me grounded was when I was 5 years old, and the first time I finger painted, I literally knew my path. So I spent a lot of time drawing, painting, and starting to create things. And it was kind of fun because my teachers took notice because I was able to draw things in perspective, 3-point perspective when I was in third grade without anyone teaching me. And I used to remember that the other kids were always wowed by it, and I thought, "Well, it's in front of you. Can't you not see the dimensions?" So, but I was super shy at the same time, so I very much kept to myself. But what kept me, you could say, out of trouble was being creative and um, kind of like you say, creating my own world through my imagination and
Yeah.
designing and drawing on a constant basis.
So you that was an outlet for you to express yourself because you being a a quiet child, very shy. You probably were like looking for some way to like express yourself and put your mind, your creativity at work, right? It's super cool.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, so do you think? I guess my question to you is because this is something I'm trying to figure out is the current like school system, right? Do you think it's engaging for most kids? Because I know some children, like for me, either I was sleeping or I was asking every single question possible because I was curious about the topic, right?
Mhm.
Like I
Mhm.
perfected how to sleep while trying, like not really, them not noticing I was sleeping. I would sit
Mhm.
behind a bigger kid. Like I had a whole strategy on how to like kind of glide through class, right? Because I
Right.
just wasn't engaged, or I just thought maybe the I wasn't smart enough. Maybe it was a confidence thing. I'm not sure. But do you think like I feel like now because you have the kids that kind of grew up in the previous generation are now the teachers, and I think that a lot of them are trying to engage the students plus they have software and computers and different things like that. Why do you think you weren't paying attention or bored? Was it because the curriculum wasn't really kind of set for you? Like, what do you think?
It was a combination of things. One, I just literally recently found out I have a severe form of dyslexia.
Oh, wow, interesting. Okay.
So the creative side of my brain was really developing very rapidly, you could say. I was solving problems, but solving it outside of the traditional methods. And um, and back then, dyslexia wasn't quote unquote known as well.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if a kid back in, I was doing a bunch of research. It wasn't until like even after not even in the 80s or 90s, but even really in the 2000s when it started to get recognized
Yeah.
with people with dyslexia. So they just thought something was wrong with me. And at the same time, I was like, well, it's so simple as far as figuring out solutions. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy I was stuck in. And that's why I was kind of like bored with school at the same time. I had this dyslexia, which helped me be more creative. At the same time, it didn't put me in a status quo, you could say.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, I had we've had a lot of guests on the show talk about, autism, ADHD. A lot of that stuff was not really, it wasn't known back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Like, I mean, it was coming out, but it wasn't like a thing, like where there was programs to help these kids guide through. It was just kind of like, oh, they're not good students or they're not whatever, they're not engaged. So I think it's great that we are identifying this stuff now and helping them, giving them a better path. Um, so you're in grade school, you go to middle school, high school, like are you still kind of not doing well or like were you not really interested? Like I know through
Yeah.
did designing and art and building things change you later on? Like what happened later in your
So what
education?
happened was so school subjects, honestly, they bored me, except ones that were um, how to deal like what's happening in the real world or I love philosophy, so it wasn't that I wasn't a bad student because I still was a B average student, and then
Mm.
actually what time I got in my senior year, I got an honor roll. It just took a lot more work when I had to apply myself to fit in the quote unquote format of the system. But what happened though was teachers throughout grade school, junior high, and high school, they noticed that I had a gift and I was able to see things differently. And a lot of it had to do with my creativity in the arts. And so I was actually, I think it was in fourth grade, I was commissioned, third grade or fourth grade, I was commissioned to represent, to draw the cover of the school program. And it was very, I remember it was a very geometric shapes that I created for the school cover. And it was, I don't know, math was really, really interesting to me as well. But the point being is that through grade school, junior high, and high school, I was always put aside with maybe two other students that were really good at art. And so I was actually given commission work to do too, like create
Ooh.
packages for my um, art teacher that was coming out with a new product. So I was pretty advanced back then. And my brother, and so they enter in fact, they entered me in awards, which I didn't want to be entered in awards, and actually won awards that were throughout, California. So it was really interesting that then I got known in school as being the artist and the creative one, and people started to notice that, and I was really shy, so that actually was a here again, that kinda like oxymoron, put on a platform, didn't wanna be on a platform, didn't wanna be known, but then the teachers were promoting me to represent the school, literally. And when it came to art contests and photography contests and all that stuff, so when it came to college, my brother, my one of my brothers was in communication and communication arts, and I wanted to follow his footsteps, but in design, communication related more with advertising, and I had a portfolio, so I had an opportunity to go to literally some of the best schools in the United States in the area of design and advertising. So I chose Cal Poly, and that's when I started to accelerate and started to understand as well. You could say curriculums of schools because now I could actually pick and choose the classes that interest me, like philosophy and they say astronomy or things of that nature, where it really allowed me to expand my mind and, apply it, literally apply it as well. So, when I entered Cal Poly is the school I went to, California Polytechnic in San Luis Obispo, is when I started put things together and started to figure out solutions, and, I got to now be amongst my peers that were, super creative as well. There's a certain group of us, there's probably about 5 or 7 of us that really were kept pushing the envelope with our teachers in the areas of arts, photography, design, um, the creative, you could say the creative space. And and I had a lot of fun. So I actually, when I was in school, I was actually ended up with a real portfolio of work. I was actually applying myself, designing, brand marks and programs for actual companies that saw my talent, and I want to apply what I was learning into the real world. And I felt that was where I really started to have a lot of fun. Is actually seeing things come true. Okay, to make things from a vision and having it actually be a reality.
I have a question. When you were in high school, you followed your brother, right? Or your brother kind of led the way, and you decided where you wanted to go. But what was your goal, like senior year? Were you thinking, okay, I'm gonna go do this creative stuff in college, and then I'm gonna go get a job. I'm gonna go here. Did you have a plan in high school, or was it kind of like,
Well, that brings up an interesting question because I like math, I actually was studying. So before I went to Cal Poly, I went to Santa Barbara City College for 2 years to get a lot of the, you say, my social life. I was a late bloomer. So then I became started to get social when I entered college, and so I realized I still had a lot of growing up to do, you could say, socially, and so I decided to go to Santa Barbara City College, and when I was going to school there, I started to take on computer science. So I started to learn CAD and was it Fortran and basic programming and all that stuff, and I thought that was very fascinating. I actually I'd taken some architecture classes as well. So what happened is that the time it was time to really declare my major, my My parents wanted me, well, my mom wanted me to become get into computer science because computer science was starting to just come, you could say, up on the horizon as a major, you could say, as a major profession, and same with being an architect. So back in the late, let's say early 80s, those two fields, industries start to grow. Okay.
Mm.
So my mom wanted me to get into computer science and be a computer scientist, and my dad wanted me to become an architect. But I felt those were too restricting in a sense that allowed me to really be creative. And I just remember a time my parents, when it came to what school I wanted to apply and what schools I wanted to apply and what major I wanted to declare, I told my parents that I wanted to follow my father's footsteps and become a graphic designer. Now, graphic design was not even a career yet. It wasn't even a
Yeah.
major. It's called applied art and design. It was a double major. Anyways, my mom said, "You'll be a starving artist." But my dad said, and it hit me so hard. He says, "Do what you love."
Yeah.
And with that, he was always, he didn't talk a lot, but what he said was so powerful all the time. He was very intentional with his words. And I
Mm.
can remember, wow, he's going to support me through this, that I just gonna go all out and really study my butt off. And so the time I entered Cal Poly, I had finished playing around and surfing. Like I had figured, what I was doing in city college. I put all my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I started around 9 a.m. and finished sometimes at 5, 6, 7 at night, and then I surf Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays in the morning, from 5 a.m. to 11, and then I started doing the homework after that. So I created this whole structure. So I played a lot when I was at City College to get all that out of me. So I had a lot of fun. But the time I entered Cal Poly, I decided to get really serious. I spent a lot of my time, I should say, I did not party because I got that all out of my system. And I really was being very studious and worked my butt off
This is great.
at my major.
This is great. This is great. Okay, so now, so you're going all out, Cal Poly, right? What happens from there? Like, what do you? What's your goal? Like, are you looking to get into an agency to do creative work? Like, what did you want to do? You know?
So the time I finished Cal Poly, I ended up with a real portfolio, which is very rare that someone actually has a portfolio of real work other than schoolwork, right? And so I went back to Santa Barbara because I'm a small town kind of guy, small town kind of guy, right? And Santa Barbara is where I grew up, and I decided to present myself to the biggest agency there. Rick Garcia was a very well-known designer to design a lot of the clubs, the menus, just a lot of really creative stuff. And so he accepted me to work with him, and I had a lot of fun. Like I was painting murals, designing menus, and doing stuff that really allowed me to be really creative. And then so then my brother was actually working at BBDO and Ketchum Advertising, where his clients were like Honda and Acura and the big Fortune 500 companies. And he came down one weekend and he sat my mom and my dad down at the table and goes, "Howard, you're wasting your talent. You're wasting your talent. You need to now go to Art Center, which is a number one school. They have one in New York, one in LA, one in London. It's a number one school. Like, Audi TT came from that school, where product designing,
Yeah.
film directors have come from that school." And he goes, "You need to go to that school." And so I said, okay, because I had already worked for the biggest company there, Andy Garcia. And I feel like he's right because it was too limiting. It, there wasn't enough opportunity there, even though it was satisfying, the work I was doing. But as far as my ambition, I felt like it was true. It was too limiting and I needed to go to a big city. So I went to LA and went to Art Center, and I got into Art Center for graduate, or you could say graduate studies, and for in the area of advertising. And they had a class there that was the first Macintosh class in the world. Like it had like, I think it had like 12 stations, Mac stations with little black and white screens, no SEs. Really like, oh God, it was really interesting back then because everyone, they only have one printer. Sometimes to wait for everything to spool to get your job printed would take 3 to 4 hours. So I was there approximately till 2 to 3 a.m. every night when I was at school. Um, when I was there going to school, I would stay up to 2 to 3 in the morning because they kept the labs open. But here's what I found out is when the first time I put my fingers on the keyboard, I knew that was the future. And I
Mm.
realized that if I get stuff out of this computer rather than just print out on dot matrix back then, laser printers were not even around, and it was black and white stuff. I said, "If I get color print out of this, like film," because I was taught because I went to Cal Poly, so I was taught with all the traditional methods. Everything was done by hand. We're stripping film or sending out for typesetting. Like, it was very convoluted to get one piece out. Even one business card, you had to get, a messenger to typeset and bring it back to you, see if you like it, and mark it up and send it back, and it got very expensive too to produce one piece. Sometimes it cost me $1,000 literally to create one business card because I would want it perfect. So anyway, so I decided that I wanted to create my own company, um, because this is what happened after I got when I completed art center is that I was showing companies what was possible with a Macintosh computer, and I'd started to show big companies and even mid-sized companies, but they didn't understand what the hell I was talking about, right?
Mm.
So then I took it upon myself to build a printed piece, promotional piece, and create my own pieces to show was possible because I figured out how to break the code, how to get things printed from the computer that were in color that did a better job than the old traditional methods. Back then, when I'm saying old, that was the conventional method, how everything was getting done. So then I had this promotional piece that I put a lot of money into, and I started to show companies, and since it was actually created, they said, "Oh my God, you've actually figured out how to get stuff printed from the computer that's more than 8.5 by 11, black and white, but actually color pieces." And I created my company where one specialized in printing. So I got a printing company to strip the film. I got one of the first digital photographers involved, and I got a special effects person that we worked on movie posters together. And then me being a designer, art director, I created my company, How Studios, which is now known as How Creative. And I put this piece together. I shared to show Fortune 500 companies, and they understood what I was doing
So let me ask you
because they
this.
wanted that edge.
You what made you wanna be an entrepreneur? I mean, like,
Mm,
you know what I mean? Like, because
right.
what I'm hearing is, like, your brothers I don't know if it's the same brother, but you mentioned the brother 2 times that kind of you were following. I don't know if it's the same brother or not. Is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this brother's pushing you. He's older. He's like, you could do better. You could do this. Your dad's, basically backing you. Your mom is telling you to do something, but she's trying to protect you as well because she wants safety and consistency in your life, right? Um, so you definitely seem like you had good support system from your family, right?
Correct.
Um, but what to go and to become an entrepreneur? I mean, you're taking big risks here. How old were you at the time?
God, that's a good question. I think I was like, well, I started at such a young age being an entrepreneur because I was an entrepreneur all the way back in grade school, third, fourth grade, when I got commissioned to represent the school. And then I'm not kidding you, a lot of students wanted to buy my art for like a dime or 25 cents. I'm like, "You wanna buy my art?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." So I became an entrepreneur, quite honestly, when I was in grade school. So I was used to creating, you'd say, my own lifestyle. And you're right. When I did see my brother, working in a cubicle in an ad agency, I'm like, I don't know if I would like that, And I did work with 2 companies, before I created my own company for a brief period of time, and I do not regret it. It was great. One was Andy Engel, and he saw what was possible or what I was creating, so he took me in. But the only problem was he wasn't adapting to the computer why I wanted to be there was to show him what was possible, and he was doing things traditionally. But he did open me up to how to create and produce really excellent pieces because his clients are like MCA Capitol Records, Paramount, like big giant studios, right? So I got to work and see how things were done and how he communicates to these big studios. So I took that as part of my education of how do you work with big Fortune 500 companies. And then Design the Avant-Garde, who want to hire me for Anigo, didn't have the budget to hire me, didn't have the position and the budget to hire me. And finally, they called me 6 months later and said, "How are we ready for you?" Okay. I work with this company called Design the Avant-Garde in Venice in California, and we're doing really creative work. And they were very receptive of doing things on a computer because they had a computer, but they didn't know how to utilize it to the degree that I was showing them.
Mm.
What happened was the recession hit in the 80s and they had to let me go.
Was that the savings and bond, crisis?
That was before well, we got 2 recessions.
Oh,
It
right,
was
there
a
was
big
2, that's
that
right.
was a 2008 was a big one. That was during the whole thing with, the mortgage situation. And we had to have the one in 2000 or excuse me, 1980, what was it, 89, 89, somewhere around there. I think that was the bond one. I think
Yeah,
that was the bond one. Yeah, you're right. That was the bond one. That
yeah,
was the bond one. You're right. So, so anyways, that's when I had that's where I started to realize I could work with another company because a lot of companies want to hire me full time. I had Fox come up to me, UPN come up to me and go, "We'll give you a creative job." And I said, "I'm not interested." And they're like, "Well, you don't even know what we're going to pay you." I said, "I'm not interested." I really had my mindset. I did not want to work in another company because I didn't like how it was constructed. Having worked with a lot of big agencies, ad agencies, I didn't like the hierarchy and decision making. And I didn't like, quite honestly, I didn't like a lot of the waste of money as well. Like, okay, we got hired a lot. My company and I got hired a lot at big agencies, but then they would take all the credit and then it'd mark up like, 10x or 20x, right?
yeah, and then pay
So
you
my thing,
guys like 10, 20% of what the project was worth, yeah.
yeah. And so exactly. So then I was like, why don't I just, I'm the one, my company and I are the one that are doing all the work behind the scenes. Why don't I create a company where we do quality work for less?
Is
Like
there
quality work for less.
is there anyone in your childhood or young adult life that was entrepreneurship that kind of, you looked up to, or was this all solely based on just the dysfunction of the industry at the time? You saw you didn't like you knew you could do a better job or there was a better way and you took it upon yourself. Like, which one was it? Or was it both?
Yeah, there were my couple family members, my brother Barney, who had his own dentist practice, but they're just yeah, basically just him. Everybody else worked for a company or corporation. Um, it was more me seeing the problem because I love solving problems. That
Mm,
was my strength, you could say, is I love to solve problems, and I saw this problem that was happening in front of me, and I realized that I had a better solution. And that had to do with the aid of the computer that no one was utilizing to the degree that how it could be used to create maximum potential. And
and
so there's
because
a huge gap, you could say.
And Howard, you're so curious about how the computer worked that you basically mastered it, right? And then you went and you even showed it to other agencies, but a lot of them weren't interested or whatever. So you saw resistance. And a lot of times when the technology meets resistance, that's when the greatest potential is, right? I mean, you fast forward now to AI. A lot of people are a little resistant to AI. Well, I don't want to use it. I don't know. What is this? What is that? And there's resistance to it. And actually, this is the greatest opportunity to master it and leap ahead of everyone else. So I wanted to ask you something because you said you surfed during your first, when you were in community college, right? I was always curious. I never surfed before because I actually was afraid of drowning. I had a fear of drowning growing up. I didn't take swimming lessons or anything. I actually just learned how to swim a few years ago. I took lessons and can now jump off, a diving board into a pool and not drown and swim to the side, right? I'm not a great swimmer. I'm basic swimming. What is it that you enjoy about surfing? Is it
Oh,
being connected to the nature? And is there any correlation between that and entrepreneurship?
I would absolutely say yes. And so college is when, so I started surfing when I was in, I think, fifth grade. And then college gave me the opportunity to create my own curriculum in City College so that I could surf Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And that was the height of, you could say, of where I consider myself pretty good. What I, so with entrepreneurship and surfing, for me, it was always to challenge myself.
Okay.
So back when I surfed, basically when I was in college, I literally was looking for the biggest waves to surf. I went down to Mexico, go to Hawaii, went all the way to Santa Cruz. Like I would be searching for the biggest waves. Back then, pretty much I was fearless. I had a bad surfing accident. Unfortunately, it screwed up my back. But the point being is this, the correlation is that I kept pushing the edge
Mm.
as an entrepreneur, and I still do. And then I pushed the edge of surfing, although I have to pull back, way back now, and I don't do what I used to do because of the injury I incurred. But the point being is a correlation. Um, there's a very tight correlation as far as how much better can I get? How much deeper can I go? Where's the edge and how can I push it further?
What
And
is
it was only for me. It was always just for me, not to prove to anybody else, but just to prove to me what was possible.
Yeah, and I can't I agree with you. I feel like sometimes, like, I don't know, sometimes I'm like, "Hey, Jim, what do you keep pushing yourself? Why? Why? What is it? What is?" And you're right. It's not that I don't care that someone else says, "Hey," pats me in the back, says, "Great job. Oh my God, you're amazing. You did this." I don't care about that. I care about, like, can I do it? You know? Can I make can I do I have enough will and power and focus to do this, right? So my question is, when is it enough to say, okay, you don't really need to push that much more? What do you need to prove, right? Is there a line that we say, okay, we're done, or are we always just gonna keep pushing?
Well, quite honestly, physically, I can't push myself. And I that was one sport. I was really into free climbing, which is, a form of rock climbing. And then I was really into mountain biking.
Whoa,
But I
whoa,
can't.
I can I just hold on.
Sure.
Free climbing. When you say free climbing, that means you don't have any safety. Uh,
Right, right, right,
you're literally, if you slip and fall, you're dying, right? Like,
right.
okay.
I had a bad
Why
incident.
did you do that? Was it the thrill?
Well, I think, there's an exhilaration behind this stuff, like surfing the biggest waves when you just drop in. You cannot hesitate for a second. You're working not off your brain in the sense of like, if you think you're dead, you gotta just have such an instinct to be able to do it with such confidence
Mm,
that it just kinda it's interesting because it's like this edge between if there's any hesitation or doubt, you're screwed whatever sport it is. But then there's a space that you get into the zone
mm,
that, of course, you just become one. And I know that sounds airy-fairy, but it's the truth. Like, and that's how it is for me when I push design. It's not me coming up with the answer. I think honestly, it's my soul that's coming through going, "Oh, that's the answer." And then I'm just like, "Oh," just following it, mentally, and then reverse engineering exactly what happened just now. And by the way, chat, I love chat for helping me do that. I'm using chat in a way that articulates formulas that I've been working on literally for years. And then just yesterday, I had a massive breakthrough, and that's what keeps me up at night when I was using chat. And it allowed me to articulate exactly what I had figured out. But that's another subject. But
Right.
anyway,
Well, we can no, we can go into that after. But I wanted to ask you, like, when you can't think, so it's basically you have to just react. But to in order to react, you need to practice, right? It's like a
oh yeah,
muscle, right? Right.
yeah, true.
No, no, I'm saying like for people that want to do surfing or climbing or any type of sport that they just, oh, I'm just scared or whatever. There's a path to getting to that, which is you just start, you keep going, and you do it long enough where, like, they talk about NFL and NBA players when their pressure's on, they're down and they only have a few minutes, like a little couple time on the clock. They're reacting. They're not thinking, right?
Right,
The ball gets snapped, they're thrown, they're moving. There's
right,
no thinking, you know what I
right,
mean? They're just reacting
right.
because it's a muscle mass, a muscle memory.
Right.
All right. Okay, this is good. This is good stuff. Howard, this is I gotta say, this is a great I love where we're going right here with this. So okay, so now you start. Is there any other thoughts you wanted to touch on of what
You
we
know what?
said?
I like what you're saying, though. You're right. It's practice, 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 and then you master it. And I think what pushes me is that after I master one, you could say like one industry or one part of a business, then I naturally have to go to the other area to mastery. And maybe this had to do because going back to when I was a kid, if people thought there was something wrong with me because of my dyslexia, and I'd had to be creative to figure things out and come up with different solutions and different approaches to the same problem. I think what's pushing me now is that because I realized, and I kind of realized all along, but I took a test to find out that I was dyslexia, and I was like 94% dyslexia, that I realized that that empowered me, that knowledge to know that I was and that I am, allow another door to open up as well. It's really interesting. So then I don't make it like I was looking to, well, who had dyslexia that 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 are some of the ones that I admire. And it's funny because every person I admired the most, Einstein to Steve Jobs, okay, they all had dyslexia. Like
Yeah.
every person aspired to and admired, they all had dyslexia, which is kind of ironic, you know.
So let me ask you this, since we're on the, 'cause I could ask you this later, but I want, since we're on the topic, what would you say to another entrepreneur that does have dyslexia? What would be a mind frame or tool that you would share with them?
The mind share I'd share with them is that, and I find this to be so true, is that people that actually the exercise the area of dyslexia and that have tapped into a natural the way they're rewired or wired the way they are wired is to tap in that creativity that a lot of times that creativity is what people don't see, but then what you are seeing will eventually, like, quite honestly, reshape how we live. Like, and I mean
Mm.
that seriously, because they're not seeing it because your brain is wired to visualize things that have not occurred just yet. And then all you have to do now is so you're creating dots, in other words, and then you just reverse engineer those dots. So then you know how to get to those dots and then you break it down. And part of dyslexia as well is take complex problems and simplify them and then simplify them to a point where they're understood so that other people could enjoy those things that are being created, whether it's a product, service, or information.
Wow, that's amazing. I love this. This is good. So now you start your own company. How you said it was How Studios, but now it's called How
Creative, right. Yeah, it's
Creative.
How
Okay.
Studios doing business as How Creative. Yes.
Okay. So you start this company, like, walk us through, like, the company and what you do and how do you grow it? You're hiring staff, like, what happens?
There's been like three major breakthroughs. The first breakthrough of my so when I created my company, it was the joining of strong fundamentals of technology. So the strong fundamentals had to do with structure. And because I'm being I don't know if this has to do with being dyslexia. I got it from my dad, where I'm a whole brain thinker. He is definitely not dyslexia. But anyways, the point being is that every time I think on the left-hand side, what has to do with structure, systems, and it and being rational, my right side of the brain goes, well, what's creative about that, or vice versa. So I'm always thinking in parallel. And I think that's
Mm.
the reason why then I got creative with the computers with my team and how to bridge programs together that were not designed to work together, but gave us the edge over huge agencies to do creative work. Okay. Because we're able to do things that are more engaging and faster and also cheaper as well. So the first breakthrough was figuring out solutions that other people could not figure out or other agencies could not figure out. Like we literally brought DVDs to market. So remember VHS and Beta were fighting for the living room space for rentals. Um, and all of a sudden DVD took over that space. We were the ones that help create the DVD to help pioneer for them to be the ultimate choice to watch movies, okay, in that format. And so what I was in charge of is helping design an interface. So you pop in a DVD, you knew how to operate it.
Oh, yeah.
The Hope was called a GUI. And then we're also in charge of the campaigning and creating trade publications and consumer ads and billboards to communicate to the consumer why this is superior over VHS and Beta. And so I ended up working with a lot of companies that utilize our skill set, me and my team. So we did the first animations for ABC that was ever done on a Macintosh computer. It opened gateways for software companies to approach it as well, like Adobe, After Effects, and Premiere. This all before that. We're doing stuff that no one said was possible. And that goes back to challenging myself and then just having someone say, oh, I could see that and give us a little window. And quite honestly, we didn't even know how we were going to get it done. We were just committed to get it done. So we had a lot of sleepless nights. And I have to say, we never missed a deadline either. So it was a gnarly first 10 years. So that's what I did the first 10 years with my company is literally help create technology that allowed people to adapt to in all media spaces. We're talking about DVD, motion graphics, print work, how it's done on a computer as well. Um, so we're the first multidisciplinary firm, branding firm. Okay. But it was more than branding. Anyways, we did that. We helped out creating the posters for the World Wide Web to be used for the World Wide Web. We got hired. Me and a couple of other teams got hired to create the posters to lobby for the World Wide Web, to show what was possible outside just governmental use and medical use, how the World Wide Web could be applied, which we now, of course, call the internet. And so I was on a lot of really super creative teams to help reshape literally, or you could say even shape the modern world. We created for UCSB the Access Debit Card, where the card was only used for student ID, and they go, you know what, we want to use a whole debit system. So then not only use it for your student ID, but you could like buy books, you could purchase food, you could go to events, and it's a debit system. So then the statements would go to the parents. So the parents understood what the kids are spending money on. Okay. So it became so huge that we had to brand it. So we created the billboards, the brochures, the brand mark, everything about the whole ecosystem. It now is actually the foundation for all most school systems on debit system, most school systems around the world, which is produces several tens of billions of dollars annually for our schools, literally. So, so I did that for the first 10 years of my life. That was the first breakthrough, was taking strong fundamentals of design and advertising and business building with technology. Okay.
Mm. You
So
know,
that was oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, Howard, it's just interesting, like, you're talking about advertising the World Wide Web, right? Like, it's so part of our life, like, I don't know if anyone can think about not having the internet or the World Wide Web part of our life, and at a time you were at the point where you were hired to, promote that, right? Kinda like I guess the next wave, and technology is always waves, right? You had the radio, then you had the TV,
Right.
then you had the
Right.
DVD, right? Like there's progressions, right? And now we're, at Chat GPT, right? AI with agents, with multiple layers of assistance and programming, and we're building data centers so our technology can even grow. Like, think about that. The data centers going in, once they get built, I mean, what can we do? Like, how much more productive can we be, right? And people are freaking out about jobs, but like, look at you. You left the traditional format and incorporated technology with framework and systems to excel ahead of your competition. Now, some of them went, they closed up shop, some of them adapted, and it continued on, right? And people still got hired by these agencies and what. I don't know if I necessarily think that AI is going to create huge job losses. I think what it's going to do is repurpose people, right?
Yeah, I've seen it within my own company. My wife is really cool because she listens to a lot of podcasting and a lot of cool stuff before it becomes known.
Mm,
And I remember when we go on road trips, we love taking road trips. We put on a podcast, and this is years ago. I think it was 3 years ago, before, like, when ChatGPT came on board, before it was known really. Anyways, the point being is that she goes, "God, you gotta listen to this podcast," and it's on ChatGPT. And I said, "Oh my God, this is reminds me of the whole digital revolution back in the late '80s." And
yeah,
it didn't catch on to 2000, quite honest. It took 20 years for the media or the masses to figure this out.
yeah.
But anyways, the point being is that I go, this is exciting to me as it was then. And it's gonna do so much for humanity. And you're right. Well, here's what I see. This is what my perspective is, and how I've been utilizing chat from the standpoint of hiring, is that for me to hire someone is taking away the production of people that are like, how can I say this? That are less experienced and less skilled, to hiring those that are very skilled, and then using AI to support those individuals that are very skilled, exactly what you're saying, but they still need to have that skill set to be able to direct. The way I see chat is that you have to be a great creative director and art director. The more that you can articulate the subject matter that you're an expert in, the better the results. If you're a layman, you're not going to get the results as someone that's an expert. But think
Oh,
of
I
it,
see it. Because
yeah,
it's all leveraged.
it's all leveraging.
You need. So let me ask you, when you're, what is it called? Not a Mozart. Is it somebody that, uh, when you have a orchestra,
Right.
a maestro, you need
Maestro.
a maestro that's
Exactly.
pulling and just organizing, and AI is all the instruments, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that could be for each department. So,
Mm.
like, you know, for example, and I've been trying, I got 3 really great writers, right? And copywriters. And And I've been telling them what I am as a company now, which is not your traditional conventional company. Like, I literally created a new category, which is redesign businesses, which I created and trademarked it and registered it with the government, because it's going to be the next space, in my opinion, literally the next space beyond ad agencies and branding firms and design firms and da da da. The list goes on. Anyways, the point being is this: they couldn't articulate, for example, the copy of that really truly reflects the value of what we do here, literally.
Wow.
So I've been working with chat literally for, I don't know, 4 months on this. 3 days ago, it had the breakthrough. And now I'm rewriting all of our content on everything. Like, our website's gonna be different, our brochures are gonna be different, the way I speak's gonna be different, the way I present my presentations to big companies and, conventions, so forth and so on. That could have never happened with my conventional writers, that I had to orchestrate that section. You could say the flute section, the violin section, and fine tune that section. But I
Mm,
had to be very direct and I had to be more articulate. But as I wrote stuff more in chat, the more it spit out, the more refinements of what I'm doing, to a point
mm,
then it had a breakthrough and goes, "This is what you're doing." Like chat's like, "This is what you're doing." And now that everything that I do that's in the past, which is only like 3 days ago, it says, "That's not who you are."
yeah. So
So it's
let
actually
me
changing. It's actually having me adapt rather than, it's having me adapt into what I've been doing for literally 25 years in a way that now it's able to articulate for me. And now I can use that into my vocabulary of business.
Yeah, yeah, like, this is good. So, I interviewed this guy, Park Howell, who created Story Genie, and what he does
Mhm.
is basically it's an AI system that he developed where you put in your brand and it spits out basically a brand document of all the thing, and it'll scour your website and all this. It's really creative stuff. But let me ask you this, what do you and I don't wanna spend too much time on AI because I wanna get back to your story, but what about the people that are the violinist or the people playing the trumpet? Like, how do they become the maestro, right? If you don't need that role, and how do they get the experience to become the maestro? That's where I think the issues we're running into.
So this goes back to, what you said where, people adapt to what I was showing them or they didn't. Unfortunately, a lot of companies went away. The whole typesetting companies went away. Printing companies went away. What are called the stripping of film. They all went away. They did not listen to what I had to say. A lot of big, none of the ones that did flourished.
Mm,
This is going to be even more radical. If you, in my opinion, if you do not adapt to AI, you're done already. No matter what kind of business you have, because there's always opportunity to strengthen your structure and become more efficient, more effective using AI.
mm,
Okay. Cause I work with every industry. And so the point being is that I could see where it could be utilized in literally in every industry to improve the, the literally revenue streams, your business model, and every section. Now, to become the orchestra of that violin section, it has to come with that individual and their passion to learn.
mm,
School is a great college is a great foundation, but that's not where you learn. Where you learn is when you apply yourself in the real world. So the ones that are really, in my opinion, are really going to come get out and swing out ahead are the ones that are passionate at what they do and self motivated. Okay, so in my opinion, without that equation, it's going to be more challenging.
yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So you're running your company, right? What were some let's talk about failure, right? What's one of your biggest failures, or what happened and what did you learn from it?
Well, the biggest failure, well, there's one from my, well, there's, okay. What my biggest failure was a very large company that heard about us, that wanted to hire us, and I had the flu. And they want me to work on a brochure for their client, which is huge. I mean, this is a really big client, a really big company where they have a lot of big influence in their enterprise. And I remember it became a failure, but not exactly, I could say. So I designed the brochure for this company and I presented to them. And I told them I had the flu, and they really said, "We need you. We need you. We need you." And I could tell you all the things I learned from this. So I went ahead and worked on it, and I was sicker than heck. I had a fever. I was able to get it done. I presented to them, and instead of being a traditional 8.5 by 11, it was a square brochure. And it shocked her like, wait a second, this isn't something, that's typical. It's square. what came out of it was a failure from the standpoint of working within the standards of what's typical in that space to something that became innovative because it got recognized of being different and attracted people's eyes because it was square. Now you look at brochures, now they're all different sizes and
Yeah, yeah,
shapes,
yeah, but back then
right?
it was
Now,
seen half
yeah,
that
but
way.
back then it was like, this is a sin.
So did you get the client or no?
Oh yeah, they went with
Uh,
they moved forward with it because I was like I was apologetic saying it was supposed to be a typical 8.5 by 11, and I said it came out square, and they said they kind of like hesitate at first. I'm like, oh wait a second here, this will work. But the failure was that I did not do it the way I intended to, and what I learned from that point on, I never took on a project that I felt 100% healthy and capable and had a time for. That
Ooh,
was a huge takeaway for me. And so, because everything has to do with me is making as best it can be done. Well, that just requires more time. Okay. Even with chat, um, when it comes to fine details. But the point being is that I learned number one again is I never take on projects when I'm sick or that I feel like I cannot give 110% of myself.
that's good. That's a good point. What did you learn about like how did you structure your business in the sense of like how do you price out projects? How do you manage your team? What's the inside scoop of like, how the company worked and how it made revenue?
Yeah. So I work with all size businesses, everyone thing, an entrepreneur to small business to Fortune 100s, to big Fortune companies. I go by AIGA, which is set the standard in a book that I've been following, a book I followed all the way since I created my companies in since 1987. And it sets the standards of what the pricing should be based on the caliber of work that we produce. So I price it in there, and I always go for, quite honestly, it's probably not the smartest move, but I'm fine with that. I always go with what is just at the lowest point of premium or just from the standpoint of medium class firms. So I set myself there because I know what I'll deliver is far greater value than anybody compared to my price.
Oh, I see. So instead of charging top premium and providing premium, which is just dollar for dollar, you lower it down to, like like whatever, like the lowest level of premium, but provide premium work. So there's always equity and growth, not equity, but like a big gap between the price and the work benefiting the client. So then
Right.
and then what do you think? And then because of that, the client keeps coming back? Is that why?
Now, it's because when I got done working with Fortune 500 companies for 10 years, I actually I wouldn't even think of my finances then. Was very satisfied. And because I did charge a premium price. In fact, a lot of them go, wow, you're charging more than the next company. I said, well, if you want higher quality work with better value, then I'm the right fit. If you don't, then I'm not the right fit. I was very black and white. And I think they hired me because I was so black and white. And I also knew I could produce and give them better outcome, like literally better results that increase their ROI,
Yeah.
their whole, revenue stream and become, you know, much more valuable as a brand. And so I help a lot of big brands, Fortune 500 company literally expand their market to increase their overall, enterprise value. Okay. So what happened was, why did I switch? This is when I was living in Santa Monica and I was busier than heck. Like I didn't have to, people were finding me, calling left and right. Like Disney would call me, Paramount would be calling me. I had Columbia calling me. I had Microsoft want to do work with me, but I was already doing stuff with Apple. So I felt that was not fair to Apple. Anyways, the point being is that a friend came to me and said, you know what, Howard? He says, you're being really stingy. I said, why? Why do you say that? And we're good enough friends. We could be really straight with one another. And he said, because you're not helping up smaller companies. And I said, I really thought about that. And so, I actually had a really spiritual awakening, which I don't want to talk too much about, but it had me move out of sell my place in Santa Monica, and I moved to Topanga, which in LA, it's an oasis. It's now considered one of the best places to purchase now. The word got out, but it took about 30 years for it to get out. It's literally, you're up in the mountains and there's no street lights, there's no shoulders. And this is like where Neil Young, a lot of creative people go up there, a lot of like artists, actors, musicians, writers, they all head up there. The ones that kept it as a secret, including myself. Um, the point being is that when I moved up there, I did not transfer my number, and I wanted to start from scratch and recreate my business and reinvent it and do more than just branding and to open it up for all size companies.
Mm.
Okay. And it was a reason because it was a spiritual thing that happened to me. And so that's the reason for when I had that pricing where I wanted to deliver more value than any other competitors in our space, okay, that they get the best investment. And the reason for that is because also the other reason that came true to me is the reason why I want to resolve the problem. Why do 95% of companies fail or become stagnant in the first 2 to 5 years? I wanted to invert that number into successful businesses. And so the only way I could the only way I could invert that number is now, I speak around the world, and I also have a book that I created to help businesses out, because I really believe that if they understood how to structure their business, they could flip it around and become more successful. Because there isn't a book that actually integrates the business, brand, marketing, and sales.
And, some will say that's the most important part of the business, right? Because if you don't have marketing, you're not leading to sales. If you don't have sales, you don't have revenue, and therefore you're out of business. What do you think is the number one reason businesses fail?
Oh, there's lots of reasons. One is that what they've been taught to focus on is profit, revenue, and marketing budget. In fact, most companies only operate for that. I would say over 95% of companies operate for that space. They're not looking at, and they're not looking at quite honestly, they're not looking at their business model. And a lot of their business model has a lot of hidden potential and is missing, literally missing some of the content to make them successful. For example, differentiation. Like if they're just saying, oh, well, you know what, we paint houses. Well, if they're not differentiating why them versus anybody else,
Yeah.
right there, that's part of the business model that they failed to look at. Or let's say is looking at SaaS, which is software as a system to create repeat buyers to actually then shift the margins where they're not squeezed, but actually broaden the margins because now they have clients or customers that now are predictable to come back because maybe they have them on a SaaS where they do a maintenance. Okay. We just did that for an HVAC company where, hey, we want to be the number one HVAC company in San Diego area. And so I say, well, most HR companies are not looking at their business model and not looking at their brand in a way that they are clear of their positioning, they're clear of their voice, they're clear of their tone, they're clear of the personality of the brand. So it stands out from all the others and create a whole ecosystem. So their vehicle wraps, the billboards, everything has a similar look and feel. But it's not just that from the superficial level, cosmetic. We're talking about how it's anchored into the business model. So, for
Mm.
example, just real quick, is like they had it where, go to a job site to finish the job. And I said, well, what about repeat business? We're not thinking about repeat business. I said, why don't you offer this? You create a plan, a maintenance plan that you show up every year to see, and you give a rating on all their appliance, not just, the HVAC, right? They come in for, like, say, a plumbing job. You're going to do it without the entire system, like how their water heater is doing or whatever how their AC is doing. And you're going to give them a rating system. And then they're going to have an opportunity to be in a plan. So if they want your services or they want your product, that's going to cost them less because they're part of your plan. This
Mm.
has changed all their math. This changed their business plan where they become a lot more profitable with the same amount of clients. So
I
The
have
biggest
that.
thing,
I have that.
yeah, yeah.
There's a local HVAC company. They charge you, it's a plan, and they come twice a year. They check your, heating system and your cooling system.
Mm.
And if you buy anything that needs to be fixed, you get 20% off, for the service and the parts. And they're already here, so there's no extra visit. They show up, they check, "Oh, you need I have it in my truck." Boom, boom. So now you're getting 2 visits in 1, and it's like Costco. You have a yearly membership. So let's say it's like
Right.
$129 times 3,000, 4,000 clients. You're talking about huge numbers where now that money can be applied to marketing or just infrastructure or rent or whatever part of your business it is, you know? And as the consumer, it's convenient for me. So I'm in it. I love it.
Exactly. And so that's consider what would the cost for switching for, like, let's say a Costco, let's say HVAC um, customer to switch to another one. It's too big of a cost for that quote unquote customer to switch. And
Mm,
so that's where you get into loyalty, which is the brand loyalty. And that's where you get into what's considered as returning revenue, annual returning revenue. So when companies say, "Oh, I want to become, I want to sell my company," you're not thinking this way. You unfortunately, you're never going to get there unless someone you hire, on your team understands this. So that's the first thing is that the business model, why companies don't make it is their business model has been flushed out or fine-tuned or it's missing key ingredients is to
mm.
allow them to be more sustainable, to allow them to keep growing and scaling. Okay. And to be a lot more profitable. And it's called enterprise. So what's the difference between a business and enterprise is an enterprise where it's not dependent on the founder to be able to sell to each customer. Now you have systems in place. So that's the second thing. Is it a business model? The second thing is having systems in place. So then that's where chat comes in. Wow, that's where chat really takes hold of things. So once you create systems in place, then you have what's predictable as far as customer service, as far as revenues, as far as what could be as a strategic partnership. It's when you put these systems in place and then people work off those systems so they don't have to think
Yeah.
about what they need to do.
They're
They
executing.
already know what they need to do.
Yeah. So
Okay.
instead of like thinking around, kicking cans all day at work, they're executing. So it creates higher productivity, better service, more efficient service. I'm all in. This is great. So tell me, I wanted to touch a little bit on your book and maybe the mind frame of I'm sorry, the mindset of what you've been teaching and talking about around the world. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Sure. So I create a book. So why I created my book, because when I started branding, branding was not even known as a category as it was when I was in school, where graphic design was not even a category until I graduated and graphic design became a major at Cal Poly. So it's like a little, again, I like being ahead of the curve, you could say. So then I started to build brands uh, 30 years ago, and branding's only been really known in 15 years. Used to call it image marketing because I knew I was creating a new space. The point being is that when I was looking into branding as much as possible, it was like other companies that or experts in the space. I want to know what their thoughts were around branding, and quite honestly, it was just a handful of books that were out there, and none of these books taught you how to build a brand because they didn't want to give some of their secrets away. Okay.
Mm,
So that came with my epiphany I had, after 10 years of working Fortune 500 companies and working on their brands and looking at what it really takes to build a sustainable brand actually has a lot of quote unquote equity. Um, is that I want to create a book on on three levels. One is I want to give exercises. So anybody that's starting a business or very seasoned, I'd have exercises in there that they would know what's missing in their brand or what needs to be created in their as a brand component. because there's basically 26 DNA components to make a Fortune 500, in my opinion, of building a strong brand that's actually world class. Anyways, I talk about it and I give lessons in there and I give examples of what I've done for other companies. So now they have some context around it. Okay. The other thing why I wanted to build a book, and it's called Authentic Branding, why I created Authentic Branding, and I've actually trademarked Authentic Branding, Authentic Brands as a new category as well versus just any other brand that's based on cosmetics. I wanted to talk about how to get to the root of a brand based on its soul. So now it's
Mm,
real purposeful. It's not just I want to build a brand, that's cosmetic, and how the fonts look the same, the colors look the same. We're talking way deeper than that. We're talking about how to build equity, and we're talking about how to actually build a culture where people want to work with you. And
mm,
the reason for this too, during that time when I was working in Fortune 500 companies, I also love economics. I started to see shifts that were taking place. Why was Enron crashing? Why was MCI crashing? Why were these big companies crashing? I said, "Oh my God, they're missing the soul."
it's
So
true.
that's why I want to create this book where it had to do with the soul. And now with the younger generation, with the millennials, X and Zs, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a company that has a strong philosophy, has strong values that they could get behind, that will actually want to become an employee for. So I created this book years ago, m- have this vision that this was going to be the future. And so the book, in other words, is still very, very, very relevant. I am going to create another book using AI, but anyways, the whole book is based on the authenticity of a brand, which will never fade away because you're putting as the author, being the CEO, being the author of that brand, it's all about them being the extension of the difference they want to make with humanity, their purpose and what legacy do you want to leave behind? Their purpose and what legacy do you want to leave behind? So the book is all about hitting the consumer or buyer in the heart and in the head,
Mm.
both
So
areas.
do you think, is it what is the reason why the young generation is looking for their soul? Is it because they think that their parents worked soulless jobs for soulless companies?
It's interesting. That's a very good question. So I think what happened I love studying patterns. And that's part of about my dyslexia, and it's what I talked a lot about when I was doing this test, is I look for patterns. And so I think it's 16 nephews and nieces now, coming from a family of 8 siblings, right? A bunch of kids that come along with that. Um, and so I interviewed them way back when, and I noticed this shift of their attitudes. Um, and I realized it wasn't just them, it was also their friends. And I realized, oh my God, it's a whole generation of them. So I noticed that what's happened. There's a lot to this. There's a lot to this. So I think a big part of it is that when he took Christ out of Christmas was the start of it, is that it started to lose meaning of life. Okay. I mean, I was brought up as Catholic. I'm spiritual. I'm not a particular dope, um, ideology, you could say, in the Christian or Catholic or whatever, or Jewish. I mean, I believe underneath it all, they all come from the same space, absolutely, which is love. Okay. I think what's happened is because of religion, and it's coming back, by the way. It's really interesting what's happening. That people lose a sense of faith or a sense of who am I outside of this ego.
Mm,
Without understanding that you're more than the ego, people get confused. They get trapped in their head, which is just this noise of thoughts. And then you think it's real, and it's not. They're just thoughts that are going in and out. So I think that is a real big reasons why a lot of the younger generation are confused or want to attach themselves to business or to organizations that have a clear purpose
mm. I love
that
this.
they could be part of.
All right. So to segue from this, I wanted to ask you, if you walked into a bar and you saw your 20-year-old self there or a restaurant, what would you tell
You're not crazy. You are creative. It is not craziness. Okay. You're just not want to, think in the mass way. Um, and I think too is like, quite honestly, what I've gone through has been quite a lot through my life is that be careful about being naive.
You saying
Okay.
naive?
Naive.
Okay.
Yeah. Naive. Um, there are things that occur to me in life that I really woke up to. I'm remarried, which I love my wife. But when I was in my last relationship, wow, I had no idea what could be in a relationship, what I did not want, and what I tried to fix and fix and fix and fix for 10 years and thought I could fix it. So the other thing, so I guess I could tell my younger self, do not be the savior.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that as someone in a relationship, you can't ensure that the other person's always going to be happy, right?
Right.
You don't have like as much as you want it. I'm a fixer. I like to fix things. I'm always
Right.
trying to come up with
Exactly.
solutions, and sometimes I'm like, this problem doesn't need to be fixed. This is not a problem. There's different levels of communication, right? It doesn't matter who your spouse is. It could be a man, a woman, doesn't matter. Um, you got to figure out the level of communication, and then you have to figure out what makes you happy, and they need to figure out what makes them happy, and then hopefully together you can make each other happy, being together, but independently you need to work on yourself, and some people don't wanna do that. Some people don't wanna put that effort in. So okay. So what is, so you said, and you were saying I'm sorry, there was another part to this story that you wanted to talk about, right?
Well, just the standpoint, what exactly this is loop this into what you're saying. I remember telling and I thought the relationship that I was in was very typical because I'm still pretty shy, so I keep a lot of stuff privately to myself. One of my sisters, or a couple, actually, a lot of my sisters are very close with, and one of them, I started to talk to her and said, this is what's happening in a relationship, this, and this. This has been happening for 10 years. And she goes, "Oh my God, Howard." She's like, "You should not have to be working as hard." And her husband's like, "This is crazy what you've been being put through." Okay. Because I have a huge amount of patience, right?
Yeah.
Um, and and she said exactly what you're saying. She said, one, you shouldn't have to work so hard. And then second, this is not making you happy.
Yeah.
Because before all that, I was super happy, and I still am now. I brought it back, reconnected on a deeper level. Still working on that too. But the point being is that um, when she said that, it had me a chance really look at the relationship I was in through another lens that I was not exposed to.
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's
oh
fair.
my good. And then I started talking to more friends, and I started opening up to other friends, and like, "Oh my god, are you kidding me? I would have divorced her after the first 6 months."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay, I'm not alone. I'm not back to that. I'm not crazy."
Thank you for sharing. I know this is, a personal thing. Thank you for sharing that. So, one last question. What do you if you can talk to these young entrepreneurs, I'm sure you shared a wealth of information, but if there was one more thing that you wanted to share with young or new entrepreneurs, what would you tell them?
Here's what I learned in my exercises when I came up with that idea of using technology, um, for design, advertising, things I was doing rather than conventional methods. And everyone was saying, no, 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 can never be done. The biggest companies and studios, a lot of them that would have been my competition and telling me no. And there I was a 20-year-old kid, right? When people tell you no, that usually means you're onto something.
Mm,
And especially if you're proving it that it works. And if you're getting major resistance, it's not it's not you, um, it's not you trying to convince them, it's you as much as you believing that it works and then figuring out who would be the perfect target to accept it and adapt to it.
because maybe
And
they
that's
don't.
what it boiled down to.
It might be, and it could also be like sometimes our founders will take things personally. Oh, they don't want my product. They don't
Mhm.
understand. Sometimes it's they don't want change. Right?
Right,
It's as
right.
simple as that. They just they're not looking to make a change like this right now. And what ends up always happening is the bigger company, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. The bigger companies wait, 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 and then all of a sudden they collapse. And I never understood why companies never take like 5 or 10% of their revenue and create like an R&D kind of experimental department, like put them in the basement, put them somewhere outside of like the normal chaos of the company, and let them just tinker and work on stuff, right? And then they come back to you and say, we could do this, and you could say yes or no, but sometimes they're going to come back with some fascinating products, or new ways of doing things. You'd be like, shoot, we should be doing this. And you change and you evolve. But there's this thing about human nature. We like routine. We like consistency. And as an entrepreneur, I don't know, you need to evolve, you need to change. You gotta, like you said, surfing, right? You surf because you pushed yourself. And that's the correlation to entrepreneurship, right? You didn't just settle. Because the
Right.
first 10 years you made a bunch of money, right? Running around with these, not running, working with these big companies. You made the money. I mean, you could have just relaxed, right? But no, you decided that you needed purpose. Like you're constantly evolving. This is what I'm hearing from your story. It's fantastic. I have to say this has been really, this is really been great. I really learned a lot, Howard. Yeah, is that, I guess we could wrap up. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience or?
Yeah, you know what? You nailed it too. It's like for me, money is just a byproduct. You should not money will come. It's not that should not be your focus. With entrepreneurs, I would say is what difference can you make? That should be the focus. And then what happens too when you think that way, what difference can you make? Or what legacy you wanna leave behind as well, it becomes less about you, it's more about what's possible. You gotta open a door of what the domain of what's possible, which is like 99.9999999 of everything else, right? But you have to be open-minded enough, and the reason why exactly what you're saying, we're big companies um, become stagnant. They get satisfied on their laurels and they forget what actually created them to begin with. And a lot of times it has to do with the new CEO moves in. And it has nothing to do with what was created by the founder that did have that spark. Okay. But unfortunately, a lot of times too, why does that spark go away? Again, it was never created as a system to bring it to person or to the next CEO. Steve Jobs actually did a great job with this. I was really nicely surprised because I love Steve Jobs and what he created and what he did for businesses, but more importantly, what he did for people. And I like what Tim's doing with it. I'm really happy that Steve had enough structure in place, you know, and be able to bring those systems from generation to generation as far as the next CEO to carry forward based on his vision.
Yeah. And that's hard. That's very hard to do. It's very hard to replicate, actually.
Yeah.
Howard, this has been great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. This has been fantastic, and thank you for telling us your story. I'm super excited, and thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. This has been a great. I love our dialogue and the way that um, we had you could say conversation. It was a great, powerful conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Howard.